I'd spent 3 months sending out applications with nothing to show for it. I'm 19 years old with a high school diploma in hand, and not a single employer in Portland wanted to take a chance on me. My bank account had dwindled to double digits, and my parents' patience was wearing even thinner. That's when I saw the ad on the community bulletin board outside the grocery store. Night guard needed. Westlake storage facility. No experience required. 18 HR. The pay was almost twice minimum wage. I tore off the phone number tab before anyone else could grab it. I called immediately from my car, expecting voicemail at 4:30 in the afternoon. Instead, a man answered on the second ring. "Westlake Storage, this is James." "Hi, I'm calling about the night guard position." There was a pause, then, "Are you over 18? "Yes, sir, I'm 19. "Available to work overnight shifts, 10 p.m. to 6 a.m.? "Definitely," I said, trying to sound like I was used to staying up all night. "Come in tomorrow at 3 p.m. for an interview. Ask for James." He hung up before I could even say thank you. The next day, I drove to the industrial district on Portland's east side. Westlake storage facility stood 3 stories tall, a concrete rectangle with rows of identical roll-up doors. I parked in the nearly empty lot and went to the front office. A bell jingled as I pushed open the glass door. The reception area was small but clean. A counter, a few chairs, and a coffee machine that looked like it hadn't been used in days. No one was there. "Hello?" I called out. A door behind the counter opened. A man in his 40s stepped out, his hair graying at the temples. He wore a button-up shirt with the sleeves rolled to his elbows, and his face had the kind of lines that came from stress more than age. "You must be Ryan," he said, not quite smiling. "I'm James, the facility manager." We shook hands across the counter. His grip was firm, his hand dry. "Have a seat," he said, gesturing to a chair as he came around the counter with a clipboard. I sat down, adjusted my tie, borrowed from my dad, and tried to look responsible and trustworthy. James didn't start with the usual interview questions. He jumped right in with information about the job. "The night guard position runs from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m., 5 nights a week. You'll have Sundays and Mondays off. The pay is $18 an hour, paid weekly." He looked up from his clipboard. "Does that work for you?" I nodded a bit too quickly. "Yes, that's perfect." James continued. "The job's pretty straightforward. You watch the security monitors, make rounds every 2 hours, and make sure nothing unusual happens." "Like break-ins?" I asked. "Sometimes," he said, but didn't go into detail. "We have some security issues you'll need to be aware of. The camera system is old and goes out sometimes. Some of the doors don't latch properly. The building makes noise at night when it settles." Everything he said made sense, but something in his tone seemed off, like he was giving me a script rather than the whole truth. "We have a specific set of procedures for night guards to follow," James said, pulling a sheet of paper from his clipboard. "These are non-negotiable." He handed me the paper. I expected standard security protocols, but what I read made me stop. 1. Make rounds every 2 hours. 2. Always be polite to the old lady in Unit A3, but never open the door for her. 3. Limit bathroom visits to under 5 minutes. 4. If you hear your name called, check who it is before answering. 5. Ignore all noises coming from Unit B7. 6. Do not enter any unit after midnight, no matter what. 7. If the lights flash 3 times, go back to the security office right away. The list kept going with more weird instructions. I looked up at James, waiting for him to smile or tell me this was just some new guy prank. His face stayed serious. "Is this for real?" I asked, trying to keep my tone light. Very real, James replied. This is an old building with quirks. These rules help our night guards navigate those quirks efficiently. I read through the list again. So there's an old lady living in one of the storage units? No, James said quickly. No one lives here. It's against policy. But sometimes tenants come at odd hours. The woman who rents A3 is elderly and occasionally confused. Be polite, but don't open the door for her. She has her own key if she legitimately needs access. That made a little more sense, but still didn't explain half the rules on the list. And what's in Unit B7? I asked. Nothing that concerns you, James replied, his tone making it clear the subject was closed. Just follow the rules, Mr. Mitchell, and you'll be fine. I needed the job too badly to push further. I understand. James seemed to relax slightly. Good. Now, do you have any relevant experience? The rest of the interview went more like I expected. Questions about my background, availability, and why I wanted the job. I talked about my responsibility, attention to detail, and need for stable employment. James took notes but didn't seem particularly interested in my answers. It felt like he'd already decided to hire me before I walked in. Well, Ryan, James said after about 15 minutes, the position is yours if you want it. Can you start tomorrow night? I blinked, surprised at how easy it had been. Yes, definitely. Good. Let me show you around before you go. James took me from the office into the building itself. The main entrance opened up to a wide hallway with storage units on both sides. Their roll-up doors all looking the same except for the numbers. I smelled dust and something kind of chemical. Cleaning supplies, maybe. The facility has 3 floors, James explained as we walked. A unit's on the first floor, B on the second, C on the third. Each floor has its own security panel to access after hours. He pointed out the elevator and stairs, then took me to the security office. A small room near the entrance with monitors showing grainy feeds from cameras throughout the building. You'll spend most of your time here, James said. The monitors show all the hallways and exits. That panel controls the lighting. The red phone connects directly to emergency services if needed. Next was the maintenance room, filled with cleaning supplies, tools, and electrical panels. You shouldn't need to come in here unless there's an issue with the lights, James said, closing the door quickly. We completed the tour with a walk around each floor. The layout was simple. Long hallways with storage units on both sides, emergency exits at each end, and stairwells in the corners. Everything looked normal, if a bit dated. As we returned to the front office, James handed me a set of keys, a heavy-duty flashlight, and a walkie-talkie. The keys open all the common areas and the security office. The master key for the units is in the office safe. The combination is 102863. Only use it in emergencies. He demonstrated how the radio worked. Keep this with you during rounds. I'm on channel 2 if you need to reach me. I pocketed the items, feeling oddly official. Anything else I should know? James paused. Just follow the rules, Ryan. They're there for a reason. The night shift can be challenging sometimes. I can handle it, I said with more confidence than I felt. We'll see, James replied, not unkindly. Many night guards find the solitude difficult. The building makes noises. The mind plays tricks when you're alone for hours. I'll be fine, I insisted. I'm used to being up late. James nodded, but didn't look convinced. Report tomorrow at 9:30 p.m. for your first shift. I'll get you set up before I leave. As I walked back to my car, I glanced over my shoulder and saw James watching me through the office window. His expression was hard to read, part hope, part worry, like he was sending me into something he wasn't sure I'd come back from. But that was ridiculous. It was just a storage facility. The rules were weird, but every workplace had its oddities. And for $18 an hour, I could deal with a few strange protocols in an old building that made noises at night. As I drove home, I kept telling myself that. Just a normal job with some quirks. Nothing to worry about. I pulled into the Westlake storage facility parking lot at 9:28 p.m., 2 minutes early for my first shift. The building looked different in the dark. Less ordinary, more intimidating. The security lights made weird shadows across the concrete exterior. I sat in my car for a minute, rereading the list of rules James had given me. Some still seemed bizarre, but I needed this job too badly to ask questions. $18 an hour meant the difference between independence and moving back in with my parents. James was waiting for me at the front entrance, keys jingling in his hand. "Right on time," he said. "Good." He took me inside where fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. During the day, the hallways had looked normal. Now they went on ahead, empty and quiet, with rows of identical doors that somehow looked scarier. "You'll be alone from 10 p.m. until morning," James said as we walked to the security office. "I'm available by phone if there's a genuine emergency, but I emphasize genuine." His tone made it clear he didn't want to be bothered. The security office looked exactly as it had during my tour. A small room with a desk, chair, and wall of monitors showing grainy black and white footage of hallways and exits. James handed me a thick binder. "This is the full rule book. Read it during your shift. The condensed version I gave you yesterday covers the essentials, but there are specifics you should know." I flipped through the pages, noting detailed instructions about particular units, responses to various sounds, and procedures for different times of night. "The regular patrol routes are marked here," James continued, pointing to a laminated map on the desk. "Every 2 hours, no exceptions. Mark your patrol times in the logbook." He showed me how to operate the radios, check the security cameras, and use the emergency protocols. It was standard stuff until he pointed to a red button under the desk. "This is our panic button. It locks all exits and interior doors simultaneously. Use it only in extreme circumstances." "What qualifies as extreme?" I asked. James looked at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. "You'll know if it happens." He checked his watch. "It's nearly 10. Any questions before I go?" I had dozens, but settled on the practical. "Where's the coffee maker?" James actually smiled. "Break room down the hall. Fresh pot in the cabinet. Don't drink more than you need. Bathroom visits are limited to 5 minutes, remember?" I nodded. "Good luck, Mitchell. Remember the rules." With that, James left, the sound of his footsteps fading down the hallway until the building's heavy front door chunked shut. I was alone. At first, I busied myself checking each monitor, making sure I understood the layout. The facility had 3 floors with 8 hallways in total. The cameras showed nothing but empty corridors and closed doors. At exactly 10 p.m., I made my first entry in the logbook. All clear. Beginning first shift. The words looked small and insignificant on the page. The first 2 hours passed slowly. I read through sections of the rule book, trying to memorize the most important parts. Some rules seemed logical. Check all exit doors during rounds. Report any signs of break-in. Others were more puzzling. Rule 12. If you see a water puddle forming with no visible source, leave the area immediately and note its location in the log. Rule 17. Ignore children's voices after midnight. Rule 23. If your radio transmits static for more than 10 seconds, turn it off for exactly 1 minute before trying again. At midnight, I started my first patrol. The hallways were silent, except for the buzz of fluorescent lights and the soft sound of my footsteps. I carried my flashlight and radio as instructed, moving systematically through each floor. The first floor was easy enough. Units A1 through A20 lined a long hallway that circled back to the main entrance. I checked each door, making sure it was secure. When I reached Unit A3, I heard it, soft crying from inside. I stopped, shining my flashlight on the door. The rules specifically mentioned an old lady in this unit. Be polite, but never open the door for her. The sobbing grew louder, more distressed. "Hello?" I called, keeping my voice professional. "Is someone there?" "Please," came a wavering, elderly voice. "Please help me. I'm locked in." The door had a small viewing window at eye level. I stepped closer and looked inside, shining my light through the glass. An old woman stood in the middle of an otherwise empty storage unit. Her gray hair was messy, her face streaked with tears. She wore what looked like a nightgown, her thin arms wrapped around herself as she shook. "I can't get out," she said, looking directly at me. "The door won't open from inside. Please, young man." I tried the handle but found no way to open it. The door seemed sealed shut, with no visible lock I could access. "I'm sorry, ma'am," I said, remembering the rule. "I can't open the door. Do you have your key?" Her expression changed slightly, a flash of something I couldn't place showing up before she went back to looking upset. "No. No key. Please, I'm cold. I've been trapped for hours. I'll call my manager," I lied, stepping back from the door. "He'll know what to do." "No!" Her voice sharpened. "Don't leave me. Just open the door. It's simple kindness." I took another step back. "I'm sorry, but I can't." Her crying got worse as I kept walking on my rounds, getting more frantic, turning into wails that followed me down the hallway. I made myself keep going, checking the rest of the doors without thinking while her cries bounced around behind me. What kind of place keeps an elderly woman locked in a storage unit? I wondered. Maybe she was a confused tenant who had somehow gotten trapped, or perhaps she had dementia and didn't understand why she couldn't access her belongings after hours. Either way, the rules were clear, and I needed this job. I finished the first floor and went up to the second. By the time I got to the stairwell, I couldn't hear the woman crying anymore. The second floor was dead quiet, with rows of B units showing no signs of activity. I made sure to walk past Unit B7 quickly, remembering the rule to ignore all noises from there. The third floor was just as quiet. I finished my checks and went back to the security office by 12:45 a.m., writing down, "No irregularities except occupant in A3 requesting exit." The next hour dragged by. I kept looking at the monitor showing the hallway outside Unit A3, but there was no sign of the old woman. Had she gone quiet, or had she never been there at all? At 2 a.m., halfway through my shift, I needed a bathroom break. The facility had 2 bathrooms, one near the front entrance and another on the 3rd floor. I picked the closer one, walking down the quiet hallway to the restroom by the main office. The bathroom was basic, 3 stalls, 3 sinks, harsh lighting that buzzed overhead. I checked to make sure I was alone, then went into the stall farthest from the door. I was washing my hands when I heard it, heavy breathing from the middle stall. A shuffling sound like someone changing position. I froze, water running over my hands. I'd checked the bathroom. It had been empty. "Hello?" I called, my voice sounding smaller than I intended. The breathing grew louder. Then came a scratching sound against the metal divider between the stalls. Rule 3. Limit bathroom visits to under 5 minutes. I didn't know if this was why the rule existed, but I wasn't staying to find out. I turned off the water and headed for the door without drying my hands. The scratching got louder, followed by a sound like nails dragging across metal moving toward the stall door. I walked faster, not quite running but close. As I reached for the bathroom door, I heard a stall door creak open behind me. I didn't look back, just pushed through into the hallway and let the door swing shut behind me. Back in the security office, I dried my shaking hands on my pants and checked my watch. The entire bathroom visit had taken less than 3 minutes. I stared at the rule book on the desk, then pulled it closer. There had to be explanations for what was happening. I flipped through the pages, looking for anything about bathroom encounters or strange noises. There it was, on page 27. If you hear unexplained breathing, scratching, or movement in the restrooms, exit immediately. Do not investigate the source. So it wasn't just me. This had happened before, enough times that they needed a specific rule. I read further, finding more details about weird stuff I might run into. One section was specifically about people asking for help. You may encounter individuals requesting assistance, including but not limited to an elderly woman claiming to be locked in A3, a man with a missing eye requesting medical help, children claiming to be lost. Do not render aid, open doors, or allow these individuals to touch you. Maintain polite verbal contact if necessary, but disengage as quickly as possible. I need the actual text to rewrite. Please provide the paragraphs about Unit B7 that you'd like me to edit. Unit B7 is strictly off limits to all personnel. Do not enter Unit B7 under any circumstances, regardless of sounds or apparent emergencies originating from within. Do not attempt to view the interior of B7 through any means. If the door to B7 appears open, do not approach. Return to the security office immediately and press the panic button. I spent the next hour reading the rulebook cover to cover, getting more worried with each page. What kind of storage facility needed these kinds of rules? What were they storing here? At 4 a.m., I made my second patrol. This time, Unit A3 was quiet. I paused outside the door, then looked through the viewing window. The unit was completely empty. No old woman, no furniture, nothing but bare concrete floors and walls. I checked the door again. It was securely locked, with no way anyone could have been trapped inside. Had I imagined her? Was I more tired than I thought? I finished the rest of my patrol without problems, walking faster past the bathroom than I needed to. The shadows looked too long, and the distant noise of equipment sounded almost like whispered voices. Back in the security office, I checked the records for Unit A3. According to the rental logs, it had been empty for 3 months. No current tenant, no recent access. As dawn approached, pale light began to come through the small window in the security office. My shift was almost over. I had made it through my first night, but I had questions. At 5:45 a.m., I made my final patrol. The facility looked different in the early morning light. Just a building with storage units. Nothing scary about it. Unit A3 was still quiet and empty when I checked. The bathroom was just a bathroom, with no breathing or scratching sounds. I finished the patrol and went back to the security office to write my final log entry. Even though I was supposed to note anything unusual, I wasn't sure what to do. If I wrote about the old woman who wasn't there or the breathing in an empty bathroom, would James think I was seeing things? Would I lose this job before I'd really started? In the end, I wrote simply, 5:45 a.m. patrol complete, all secure. At 6 a.m. exactly, James arrived to take over. He looked fresh and awake, which made me realize how tired I probably looked. "How was your first night?" he asked, looking at me carefully. Fine, I said. Quiet. No incidents to report? I paused. Well, I thought I heard someone in Unit A3, but when I checked, it was empty. James nodded, unsurprised. That happens sometimes. The building settles, makes noises. Did you follow the rules? Yes. I didn't open any doors. Good. He seemed genuinely relieved. That's the most important thing here, Ryan. Following the rules keeps everyone safe. I wanted to ask what he meant by everyone, but exhaustion was catching up with me. I gathered my things, handed over the security keys, and went to the door. Ryan, James called after me. You did well for your first night. Most people... He paused. Just keep following the rules, and you'll be fine. I nodded and left, walking in the morning light to my car. As I drove home, the weirdness of the night started to feel like a dream, not as real in the bright daylight. Maybe it was just my imagination, my mind playing tricks in a strange place during my first overnight shift. Maybe the sounds had normal explanations. Pipes, air conditioning, the building settling. Or maybe something else was going on at Westlake Storage Facility, something the rules were made to protect against. Either way, I'd be back tonight. At $18 an hour, I couldn't afford not to be. The banging from Unit B7 started during my third night shift. At first, it was just an occasional thud, the kind of noise you might hear in any building at night. But by midnight, it had turned into a steady, hard pounding. Someone or something wanted out. I checked the rules again. Number 5. Ignore all noises coming from Unit B7. Clear enough. But knowing what to do and doing it were two different things. Each thud seemed louder than the last, making the coffee in my mug ripple. I turned up the small desk radio, flipping through stations until I found some late-night talk show about conspiracy theories. The host's boring voice helped cover the noise, but I still knew it was there. My first patrol at midnight went smoothly. I walked past A3, where the old woman had appeared 2 nights ago, but the unit remained silent. The bathroom where I'd heard the breathing was just a bathroom now. Maybe I was getting used to this place. Or maybe the quirks James had mentioned were giving me a break. But as I climbed to the second floor, the banging from B7 grew impossible to ignore. Each hit shook dust from the ceiling. Standing at the far end of the corridor, I could see the door to B7 rattling in its frame with each hit. The sound had a pattern now. 3 quick bangs, a pause, then 3 more. I remembered the rulebook's warning about B7. Do not enter Unit B7 under any circumstances, regardless of sounds or apparent emergencies originating from within. Walking past it, I kept my eyes fixed on the opposite wall. The banging got louder as I got closer, as if whatever was inside knew I was there. Back in the security office, I checked the camera feed for the hallway outside B7. The banging continued, but the door remained closed. No one was visible in the corridor. According to the rental records I'd found during my first shift, B7 had been empty for years. So what was making that noise? The banging continued without pause through my 2 a.m. patrol. This time I took a different route to avoid passing B7 directly, using the stairwell at the opposite end of the building. The thumping followed me throughout the facility, a constant reminder of whatever waited behind that door. After finishing my indoor patrol, I decided to check the outside of the building. James had mentioned it as part of my duties, though I'd skipped it the first 2 nights. The cold night air felt good after hours in the stuffy storage facility. I walked around the edge, flashlight sweeping across the empty parking lot and the fence beyond. That's when I saw him. A middle-aged man stood near the back entrance, hunched over and swaying slightly. My flashlight beam caught him, and he turned toward me. The left side of his face was a mess of blood and tissue. Where his left eye should have been was an empty, still bleeding socket. "Please," he called out, his voice strained. "Please help me." I froze. The rules flashed through my mind, specifically Rule 5 from the condensed list. Don't offer help to people who ask for it. But this was different, wasn't it? This was a real emergency. The man was clearly injured, possibly dying. "I was attacked," he said, staggering toward me. "Need an ambulance." Before I could back away, he grabbed my arm. His hand was ice cold, his grip really strong for someone who looked ready to fall over. "You have to help me," he insisted, blood dripping from his wound. "Call someone, please." I looked at his face. The good side was normal enough, but the injury was severe. There was so much blood, and yet he was still standing, still talking. Shouldn't someone with an injury that bad be in shock? "I'm sorry," I said, pulling my arm free. "I can't help you." His expression changed, anger replacing pain. "What do you mean you can't? I'm bleeding out here." He reached for me again, but I stepped back. The rulebook had been specific about not letting people like him touch me. Was this what it meant? But how could James or anyone else at the company know I'd encounter an injured man in the parking lot? "There's a hospital 3 miles east of here," I said, continuing to back toward the building. "I need to get back to my post." "You piece of shit," the man snarled, his one remaining eye widening. "You're just going to let me die?" Each step away from him felt wrong. Every instinct told me to help, to call 911, to do something. But the rules had been right about the old woman in A3. What if they were right about this too? "I'm sorry," I repeated, reaching the door. "I can't help you." I slipped inside and locked the door behind me. Immediately, the man began pounding on it, his fists creating the same rhythmic pattern I'd heard from Unit B7 all night. 3 quick bangs, a pause, then 3 more. "Let me in," he shouted, his voice muffled through the door. "I know you're in there." I stood with my back against the door, my chest pounding, trying to tell myself I'd done the right thing. After what felt like forever but was probably just a few minutes, the knocking stopped. When I looked through the little security window, the man wasn't there anymore. Back in the security office, I dropped into my chair, trembling. Did I just let someone hurt walk away without helping? What kind of person does that? But if the rules were right and that wasn't even a real man, then what was it? I looked at the outside camera recording, going back to when I met the guy. The parking lot looked totally empty in the video. According to what the cameras showed, I'd been talking to absolutely nothing. By 4 a.m., I couldn't take being in the building anymore. The knocking from B7 just kept going, and I couldn't stop picturing the man's bloody eye socket whenever I shut my eyes. I needed some fresh air, some space, something normal. The rulebook said I could take a 30-minute break during my shift. I radioed to the empty building that I was taking my break, feeling stupid talking to nobody, and went out to my car. I drove to the closest gas station, a 24-hour spot about 5 minutes away. The bright lights and the bored cashier reading a magazine felt so wonderfully normal after the storage place. I bought coffee and a wrapped sandwich I didn't even want, just to talk to another person. As I walked back to my car, I saw police lights blinking at the far end of the lot. 2 cop cars and an ambulance were parked with red and blue lights, lighting up the pavement. Yellow police tape blocked off an area by the dumpsters. I got curious and moved closer. Officers were working around something on the ground, a body partly covered by a sheet. From where I was standing, I could see the dead person's clothes and one side of his face. My coffee dropped from my hand, splashing all over my shoes. It was him, the same guy who grabbed my arm less than 2 hours ago. The same jacket, same body type, same look on the good side of his face. What happened? I asked a bystander who was watching the scene. Guy was murdered, the man replied. Employee found him when taking out trash. An officer was speaking to another cop nearby, their voices carrying in the quiet night. Coroner puts time of death at least 6 hours ago. Body's cold, rigor already setting in. 6 hours ago. I'd spoken to him less than 2 hours ago. I backed away, bumping into a display of windshield washer fluid. The cops glanced my way, and I turned quickly, hurrying to my car. My stomach twisted, threatening to bring up the little I'd eaten during my shift. It wasn't possible. The man I'd spoken to, the man who had grabbed my arm with such strength, had been dead for hours before our encounter, which meant James was right about the rules. What I'd seen wasn't human. The drive back to the storage facility passed in a blur. As I pulled into the parking lot, I saw another car there, a dark sedan I recognized as James's vehicle. He was standing beside it, hands in his coat pockets, breath visible in the cold air. I parked and got out slowly, my legs unsteady. "You left the building," James said. Not a question, not exactly an accusation. "I took my break," I replied. James nodded. "And before that, you encountered someone in the parking lot, a man with an injured eye." I looked at him. "How did you know that?" "The same way I know you didn't help him. You followed the rules." The relief in his voice was obvious. "That's good, Ryan. Very good. What you saw wasn't a man at all." "What do you mean it wasn't a man?" I asked, my voice sharper than I intended. "I saw him. I talked to him." He grabbed my arm. James looked at the storage facility behind us, then back to me. "Let's continue this inside." I followed him through the main entrance. The banging from Unit B7 had stopped. The whole building was quiet. In the security office, James took the seat behind the desk, my seat during night shifts, leaving me to stand. He ran a hand through his graying hair. "You've been following the rules," he said. "That's good. Most don't last this long." "What exactly is going on here?" I asked. "What happened tonight?" James reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small flask. He took a quick sip before offering it to me. I shook my head. "This facility isn't what you think it is," James began. "It's not just a storage building. It's a junction, a place where our reality overlaps with others." I stared at him. "You're saying what? That the storage facility is haunted?" "Not haunted. Haunted implies ghosts, remnants of people who once lived. What we have here are entities, things that were never human to begin with. They exist in those other realities, but here, at the junction, they can reach through, test boundaries." "Test boundaries," I repeated, "like trying to get me to open doors or help injured people." James nodded. "Exactly. They mimic humans because it's effective. They study us, learn what triggers our empathy, our curiosity. They're very good at appearing harmless or in need of help." "But why?" I asked. "What do they want?" "Access," James said simply. "A way in. These entities can't fully enter our reality without help. They need someone to invite them, to break the rules that keep them out. That old woman you saw in A3, the injured man in the parking lot, they weren't real. But if you had opened that door or taken that man to a hospital, something would have crossed over. something dangerous. My mind went back through my shifts, the crying old woman, the breathing in the empty bathroom stall, the injured man who had been dead for hours. "Why me?" I asked. "Why this job?" James opened a drawer and pulled out a thick leather folder. "You're not the first night guard we've had, Ryan, not by a long shot." He placed the folder on the desk and opened it, showing yellowed pages filled with handwritten notes and photographs. The earliest entry was dated October 28, 1963. "My grandfather built this facility," James explained, flipping through the pages. He didn't realize what he'd found at first, just thought the land was cheap. But as construction went on, workers reported strange occurrences, tools going missing, voices with no source, people appearing in areas that had just been checked. The photos showed the facility during different stages of being built. In one picture, a group of workers posed in front of the newly finished building. I spotted a blurry shape in an upper window, something tall and thin that didn't look human. "My grandfather almost abandoned the project," James continued. "Then he met someone who recognized what was happening, a specialist in, let's say, unusual phenomena. This person helped him understand the nature of the junction and how to manage it." He turned to a section called Encounters. Page after page showed stories just like mine, night guards talking about voices, ghosts, and weird sounds. "The rules aren't arbitrary," James said. "Each one was developed after an encounter. Each one keeps something specific at bay." He flipped to another section labeled Personnel. Photos of previous night guards filled these pages, along with dates of employment. Many had notes beside them: terminated, rule violation, or resigned. But what freaked me out were the entries marked missing. "What happened to them?" I asked, pointing to these entries. James's expression darkened. "They broke the cardinal rules. They let something in." He turned to a more recent section. 3 guards within the past year, all marked missing. One had a note: "Opened Unit B7. "Jesus," I whispered. "Now you understand why the rules matter," James said. "Why I can't just tell new hires the truth during interviews. Most would either not believe me or run for the hills. And the ones who do believe you, like you?" James gave me a tired smile. "They typically fall into 2 categories: those who quit immediately and those who find a purpose in it." I should have been terrified. I should have handed in my resignation on the spot. But as I went through the records and saw stories just like mine, I felt something I didn't expect. Everything started to make sense. The world actually made more sense knowing there were things out there beyond what we see, and rules for how we deal with them. "I want to understand more," I said, surprising myself as much as James. He looked at me for a while. "I thought you might. You have good instincts, Ryan. Better than most. You knew something was wrong with that man, even though you normally would have wanted to help him. So what happens now?" I asked. "That depends on you," James replied. "If you want to walk away, I understand. I'll find someone else. The position needs to be filled. The entities are drawn to awareness, and an empty building invites complications. And if I stay? Then I'm offering you a promotion," James said. "Head night guard, better pay, more responsibility. You'd help train new people, maintain the system my grandfather put in place. It's not an easy job, but it's an important one." I thought about my bank account, my struggle to find work before this. $18 an hour had seemed like a huge deal. Now James was offering more, but with the full knowledge of what the job entailed. "I'll stay," I said. Relief washed over James's face. Good. That's good. There are a few things you need to know then. He pulled out a fresh sheet of paper and wrote 3 new rules. Rule 26. If you see yourself in a mirror when you're not standing in front of one, leave the area immediately. Rule 27. Never respond if someone calls your full name from behind closed doors. Rule 28. If the temperature drops suddenly, check the camera feed for Unit B7. If the feed shows static, initiate lockdown procedures immediately. The entities know you're aware now, James explained. Things will intensify. They'll try different approaches, more sophisticated tests. I took the paper, memorizing the new rules. I'll be ready. James nodded. Get some rest today. Your shift starts at 10 p.m. as usual, but come in at 9 p.m. tomorrow. I'll show you the lockdown procedures and other emergency protocols. After James left, I didn't go home right away. Instead, I went back to the security office and checked the recordings from my previous shifts. I had to see for myself. The footage from my first night showed me stopping outside Unit A3, talking to what looked like an empty storage unit. On camera, I was alone in an empty hallway, speaking to nothing but air. The bathroom thing was similar. I went in alone, washed my hands, then suddenly backed away from an empty stall before rushing out. The weirdest was the parking lot with the injured man. The camera showed me walking around, then suddenly stopping. I backed away from nothing, my arms moving like I was breaking free from someone's grip. My lips moved, talking to empty air. I saved the worst footage for last. Unit B7. I went through hours of video showing the closed door, the hallway empty except for the occasional banging that made the door shake. Then, at 3:17 a.m., something changed. The door stayed closed, but a shadow appeared in the hallway. Way too tall, with really long arms, its head almost touching the ceiling. It stood still, facing the camera. Then, slowly, it turned toward the door of B7. The footage cut to static. When the feed came back 1 minute later, the hallway was empty. The banging had stopped. I sat back in my chair, trying to make sense of what I'd seen. According to the cameras, I'd spent my shifts talking to empty rooms and backing away from nothing. But I'd felt the cold grip of the injured man, heard the old woman crying for help. I realized something. If these things existed in realities that overlapped with ours, maybe I could see them when others couldn't. Maybe that's why James thought my instincts were important. I was seeing things as they really were, not just how they showed up on camera. As the sun came up outside the small office window, I grabbed my stuff and got ready to leave. I had a lot to think about, other realities, testing beings, rules that kept something very old away. This job was turning out to be way more than I signed up for. A week into my promotion to head night guard, I waited in the security office for the new hire to arrive. The banging from Unit B7 had finally stopped after that night with James, but the silence felt temporary, like something waiting. I'd spent the past week learning the deeper systems of the facility. Not just the patrol routes and security monitors, but the specific patterns of entity activity, the warning signs of boundary weakening, and the complete lockdown procedures. James had given me access to decades of records documenting encounters and incidents. There was so much I needed to pass on. The front door buzzed at exactly 9:55 p.m. On the monitor, I watched a woman in her mid-20s enter, her dark hair pulled back in a practical ponytail. She wore black jeans and a navy jacket, good choices for the night shift. James had mentioned she came with solid references from her previous job, but now it was my responsibility to determine if she could handle what made this place different. I met her at the entrance, putting on my best professional face. "Kelly?" I asked, extending my hand. "That's me," she replied, her handshake firm. Her eyes moved past me, scanning the lobby with careful attention. "So, this is the famous Westlake storage." "Famous?" The word caught me off guard. "Figure of speech," she said with a small smile. "It's not exactly a landmark." I took her to the security office, noticing how she looked at everything along the way. She seemed alert, careful, good qualities for this job. "So James said you'd handle my training?" she asked as we entered the office. "That's right. You'll shadow me for the first few nights before taking solo shifts." I handed her the basic rulebook, the condensed version with 28 rules that James had given me during my interview, plus the 3 he'd added after my promotion. "First thing you need to know, these rules are non-negotiable." Kelly flipped through the pages, her face blank. She paused at Rule 5 about ignoring noises from Unit B7, then at Rule 17 about ignoring children's voices after midnight. "Interesting protocols," she said, looking up. "Any particular reason for these specific rules?" I hesitated, remembering James's approach with me. New hires weren't supposed to know the truth until they'd proven themselves, until we were sure they could handle it. "The building has certain quirks," I said, echoing James's words to me. "Following the rules helps navigate them." "Quirks," she repeated, a hint of skepticism in her voice. "Like what?" "Odd noises, cold spots, the occasional, unusual occurrence." I turned to the security monitors, changing the subject. "Let me show you the camera system." For the next hour, I walked Kelly through the basics of the job, monitoring the feeds, logging entries in the logbook, conducting regular patrols. I showed her the master keys kept in the office safe and demonstrated how to use the radio system. She asked smart questions, took notes, and followed along closely. At midnight, I checked my watch. "Time for our first patrol. We'll do a complete sweep of the building, checking each floor top to bottom." Kelly nodded, clipping the radio to her belt. "Lead the way." We started with the ground floor, checking units A1 through A20. When we passed unit A3, I tensed automatically, but no sobbing came from within. I glanced at Kelly. "Unit A3 sometimes has issues," I said, keeping it vague. "If you hear an elderly woman asking for help from inside, ignore her and continue your patrol." "Is there an actual elderly tenant?" Kelly asked. "No," I answered honestly. "The unit's been empty for months." Her eyebrow raised slightly. "But I might hear someone inside." "It's probably just the building settling," I said, the lie uncomfortable in my mouth. "Old pipes, that sort of thing." We checked out the whole first floor with no problems and went up to the second. As we got closer to the hallway with Unit B7, I guided us to the stairs on the other side. "We'll take the long way around," I explained. "Unit B7 is off limits." "Because of the noises mentioned in Rule 5? Exactly. I was impressed by her recall. "Under no circumstances should you approach that unit, regardless of what you might hear coming from inside." The second floor inspection went smoothly. No banging came from B7. No entities tested our boundaries. Maybe they were giving the new hire an easy first night. We took the elevator to the third floor to begin our final inspection. The C units were smaller than those on lower floors, mainly used for document storage and smaller items. The overhead lights made a faint noise as we walked the long hallway, checking doors and making notes. We were almost finished when Kelly stopped suddenly near Unit C12. "Did you hear that?" she whispered. I paused, listening. At first, there was nothing but the buzz of the lights. Then I heard it. a soft whimpering sound coming from the storage unit. A child crying. Kelly moved toward the door, but I caught her arm. Rule 17, I said quietly. Ignore children's voices after midnight. The crying grew louder, more desperate. But what if it's actually a kid? Kelly pulled against my grip. We can't just leave them. Trust me, I insisted, tightening my hold. There are no children in this building. The sobbing turned into words now. Please, help me. I'm scared. Kelly's face hardened. Let go of me. There's a child in there. It's not a child, I said firmly. How can you be so sure? She demanded. The voice changed, becoming more frantic. Please, it's dark in here. I can't breathe. Kelly wrenched free of my grip and took 2 steps toward the unit before I could stop her. I'm coming, she called to the door. Hang on. Kelly, no. I moved to pull her back, but it was too late. As Kelly approached Unit C12, the crying abruptly stopped. Then came a new sound, a wet sliding noise like something large and damp moving across the concrete floor. Hello? Kelly called, her confidence wavering. The thing behind the door answered, not with a kid's voice now, but with a high, sharp noise that hurt my teeth. Something heavy crashed against the door from inside, making the metal bend outward. Kelly stepped back. What the hell? Another hit dented the door more. Through the gap at the bottom, I saw something pale pushing through, fingers too long and thin to be human with nails curved like hooks. I grabbed Kelly's arm and pulled her away just as the thing screeched again. Through the wider gap, a face showed up, looking like a child's at first, but totally wrong. Its jaw opened way too wide, showing rows of pointed teeth. Kelly screamed. Run! I shouted, pulling her toward the elevator at the end of the hall. Behind us, the door to Unit C12 broke open with a loud crack. I kept looking ahead at the elevator, pulling the woman along beside me. We got to the elevator, and I hit the call button hard. The doors opened right away, thank God, and we fell inside. As the door shut, I saw the thing from C12 coming into the hallway on all fours, its body twisted in ways that shouldn't be possible. Kelly pressed against the elevator wall, catching her breath. What the fuck was that? Her voice shook with fear and anger. What the actual fuck? I pushed the button for the first floor, giving us time to get to the security office. That's why we follow the rules. The elevator went down without either of us talking. Kelly looked at me, her face white but her eyes intense. When we got to the security office, I locked the door behind us and looked at the monitors. The 3rd floor hallway was empty now, the door to C12 hanging off its hinges. The thing had gone back inside, done with its job, showing what happens when rules get broken. Kelly sat down in a chair, her hands shaking a little. You knew that would happen. It wasn't a question. I took a deep breath. I knew something would happen if you went near that door after hearing a kid's voice. That's why Rule 17 exists. So the rules, she started, are designed to keep us safe from things that aren't human, I finished. This facility isn't what most people think it is. I expected denial, disbelief, maybe even accusations that I was trying to scare her. Instead, Kelly leaned forward, looking at me with sudden focus. I knew it, she said. I knew this place was different. That's why I applied. Now it was my turn to be surprised. What do you mean? Kelly sat back, looking at me for a moment before speaking. My last job was at Midnight Diner, that 24-hour place on Westbrook Avenue. We had rules too. Don't serve customers who come in during heavy fog. Never accept exact change from anyone wearing red shoes. If the jukebox plays on its own, Close early. I stared at her. And these rules actually mattered? The night cook ignored the rule about the jukebox. She said quietly, "We found him the next morning in the freezer. The coroner said he'd been dead for days, but he'd only been missing for hours." I felt that same creepy feeling I'd had when I found out the injured guy had been dead long before we ran into him. So when I saw this job opening with its specific night hours, Kelly continued, I thought maybe it was connected, that maybe I'd find some answers. "That's why you weren't more freaked out by the rules," I realized. "Oh, I'm plenty freaked out by what just happened," she clarified. "But I'm not surprised that the supernatural exists. I just didn't expect teeth like that." I couldn't help but laugh, but it came out as a short, nervous sound. "Yeah, that was worse than most encounters." Kelly leaned forward again. "So what is this place? Really?" I told her everything James had told me about the junction between realities, the entities that tested boundaries, the rules that kept them contained. She listened without interruption, occasionally nodding as things started making sense to her. "So these entities," she said when I finished, "they appear at multiple locations, not just here?" "According to James, this facility is unique because it's a major junction point," I explained. "But based on what you're saying about your diner, there must be minor intersections elsewhere." Kelly pulled out a small notebook from her back pocket and flipped to a blank page. "We should map them. Your facility, my diner, any other places with unexplainable rules. There might be patterns, connections." I hesitated, then went to the filing cabinet where James had shown me the older records. "If we're looking for patterns, we should start with these." For the next few hours, Kelly and I looked through decades of incident reports. We made a timeline of when these things showed up, noting when there were more of them and matching this with dates and places. A pattern became clear. These incidents got worse in cycles, peaking about every 7 years. "Look at this," Kelly pointed to our chart. "The last major spike was in 2017. Before that, 2010, 2003. Which means the next one is due in about 3 months, I concluded. We kept digging deeper into the archives until Kelly pulled out an old report from 1970. "Check this out. It talks about some kind of room behind the maintenance area. Listen to this. All necessary information regarding the containment system can be found in the documentation stored in the auxiliary office behind maintenance." "Auxiliary office?" I frowned. James never mentioned that. "Maybe he doesn't know about it," Kelly suggested. "This report is over 50 years old." I checked my watch, 5:30 a.m. "James will be here in 30 minutes for the shift change. We should put everything back before he arrives." As we reorganized the files, I realized how quickly things had changed. Just a week ago, I'd been initiated into the truth of the facility. Now I was bringing someone else in, someone who'd sought out this knowledge on her own. "So," Kelly said as we finished, "do we tell James that I know, or that we found this reference to a hidden room?" I thought about what to do next. James gave me the promotion partly because I could handle the truth, but he was clear about the rules for new people. They had to prove themselves first. "Let's wait," I decided. "Give it a few days. Show him you can follow the rules, handle the entities. Then we'll tell him together." Kelly nodded, tucking her notebook away. "And the room behind maintenance? We'll look for it tomorrow night," I said, "during our maintenance check." The main door buzzed. James was here. Kelly and I shared a look. We were in this together now. James walked into the security office. glancing at both of us. "Good morning. How did training go?" "Smooth," I lied, not mentioning our encounter with the entity in C-12 or our discovery in the archives. Kelly's catching on quickly. James nodded approvingly. "Excellent. Any incidents to report?" I handed him the logbook, which I had carefully filled with mundane notations. "All clear." As Kelly grabbed her things to leave, I saw her look toward the filing cabinet holding the older records. Whatever answers were in that hidden room, we'd find them together. The storage facility wasn't just a job for us anymore. It was a mystery we needed to solve. The door creaked open as I aimed my flashlight around the dusty maintenance room. Kelly followed close behind, her own light beam sweeping across shelves of cleaning supplies and electrical panels. "Where would a hidden office be?" she whispered, moving deeper into the space. It was our second night working together. After showing Kelly the regular patrol routes and security protocols during her first shift, tonight we decided to check out the auxiliary office mentioned in the old records. We needed to find this room before James arrived for his usual midnight check-in. "Look for anything unusual," I said, running my hand along the back wall. "A door that might be painted over. A section that sounds hollow when you knock on it." Kelly checked out the right side of the room while I took the left. The maintenance area wasn't large, maybe 15 feet square, filled with metal shelves and tool cabinets. Nothing looked out of place. After 10 minutes of searching, Kelly sighed. Maybe the room was removed during renovations. I stepped back, looking at the space again. Something didn't add up. The distance from this room to the outside wall seemed too short. "The dimensions are off," I said, walking back to the rear wall. "There should be more space between here and the outside of the building." Kelly joined me at the blank concrete wall. We both knocked on different sections, listening for any change in sound. Near the bottom right corner, my knuckles made a hollow sound. "There," I pointed to the spot. "That sounds different." Kelly crouched down, running her fingers along the edge of the wall. "The paint line is different here, slightly newer." We both began feeling along the section of wall. My fingers caught on something, a small, nearly invisible seam. I pressed against it, and a rectangular panel popped inward about half an inch. "Got it," I said, excitement building. Kelly helped me pull on the recessed panel, which swung outward, revealing a dark opening about 3 feet high. "Huh," she said. "They didn't make it easy to get in." "Probably by design." I crouched and shined my light through the opening. A small room lay beyond, filled with dust-covered shelves and an old desk. "We'll have to crawl." I went first, shuffling through the low entrance on my hands and knees. The air inside was stale, with a distinct metallic smell. Once through, I stood up in a space barely big enough for both of us. Kelly followed, closing the panel behind us. "Holy crap," she whispered. "I don't think anyone's been in here for decades." My flashlight showed an old office that nobody had touched in years. There was a metal desk against one wall with yellowed papers all over it. The other wall had bookshelves packed with leather-bound journals and old technical manuals. A filing cabinet was in the corner with its top drawer slightly open. "What is all this?" Kelly asked, pulling out her phone to take pictures. I went to the desk and picked up the top papers. They were diagrams of the storage facility, but with extra markings I didn't know, circles centered on Unit B7, with lines going out to different spots all over the building. "These look like some kind of energy flow charts," I said, laying them out, "and they all focus on B7. Kelly had moved to the bookshelves and pulled down one of the journals. "This one's dated 1952. She opened it carefully, the pages making a cracking sound. Listen to this. The fundamental discovery we've made is that this location represents a unique focal point where multiple realities intersect. Initial tests confirm our ability to harness the energy, but containment remains our primary challenge. I picked up another journal from 1953. Here's more. The entity continues to grow stronger. We've established a basic containment system using the geometric properties of the building itself, but it requires constant maintenance and human presence to remain stable. For the next hour, we looked through journals, technical documents, and hand-drawn diagrams. We started to understand what was going on, and it was way worse than anything James had told me. According to the journals, the original owner, Harold Westlake, had found out that the land had a natural thin spot between realities. He'd built the storage facility specifically to use this weird property, designing it as a big containment system for something powerful that existed in the gap between worlds. "Look at this," Kelly said, pointing to a passage in a 1957 journal. "The containment ritual must be renewed every 7 years through strict adherence to the established protocols. Human awareness and compliance form the foundation of the barrier. When rules are followed, the boundary strengthens. When broken, it weakens." I found a note from 1959. "We learned that people can't just sit there and do nothing. This thing likes when someone notices it, when they see it, hear it, or talk to it. Having night guards works pretty well because they can keep an eye on it without letting it get out. The guards who stick to the rules actually help keep it locked up by not giving in when it tries to trick them." "Ryan," Kelly said quietly, "the rules aren't just to keep employees safe. According to this, the employees are part of the containment system itself." I got a sick feeling in my gut as I flipped through more pages. James never mentioned any of this. He said the entities were testing boundaries, but he never said we were actively maintaining those boundaries by following the rules. Kelly found an old leather manual titled Emergency Protocols and started looking through it. "This details what to do if containment fails," she said. "It includes diagrams for placing special marked stones at specific points throughout the facility, phrases to recite at each location, even backup plans for full breaches." It suddenly clicked. James isn't just protecting us. He's using us, everyone who's ever worked the night shift, as components in this containment system. Before Kelly could respond, the doorway to the hidden room swung open. James crawled through, his face tight with anger. "What are you doing in here?" he demanded, standing up and brushing dust from his knees. I held up one of the journals. "Finding out the truth. The full truth." James looked around the room at the open journals and spread out diagrams. His anger disappeared and he just looked defeated. "How did you find this place?" he asked. "We found a reference in the old records," Kelly answered. "Why didn't you tell us what the night guard position really involves?" James sighed, suddenly looking much older. "Would you have believed me? Would anyone have taken the job if I'd said, 'You'll be helping contain an interdimensional entity by following bizarre rules'?" "You've been putting people at risk without their consent," I said, my voice harder than intended. "I've been protecting people," James countered. "Thousands of them. If what's contained here escapes, the consequences would be catastrophic." "What exactly is down there?" Kelly asked, pointing to a diagram showing something massive beneath Unit B7. James walked to the desk and dropped into the chair. "We don't fully know. My grandfather called it the confluence, a spot where different realities leak into each other. What's there isn't just one thing, but a weird rip in space-time that gets stronger every time someone messes with it. If it gets loose, it could tear open permanent doorways between worlds. I thought about all the weird stuff I'd seen. The old woman in A3, the injured man who'd been dead for hours, the child thing that tried to attack Kelly. And what about these things we keep running into? Extensions, James explained, like fingers reaching through from other realities. The rules keep them from gaining a foothold. Each rule was developed after an encounter, designed to block specific manifestations. According to these journals, Kelly said, the containment requires renewal every 7 years. The last cycle would have been in 2017, which means the next renewal is due in 3 months, James finished. That's why entity activity has been increasing. As we approach the renewal point, the barriers naturally thin. I looked at James and realized he was more than just a manager. You're not just the facility manager. You're Westlake's grandson, aren't you? James nodded. Harold Westlake was my grandfather. He built this place, established the protocols, created the first set of rules. When he died, my father took over. When my father died, it fell to me. Why not just close the place down? Kelly asked. Seal it completely? That would be worse, James said. The containment system requires active management. Without human presence following specific protocols, the barriers would collapse entirely. The storage business provides cover and income while ensuring people are always here, maintaining the system. I thought about all the night guards who'd come before me, those who quit, those who were fired, those marked missing in the personnel files. How many people have been hurt? James looked down. Too many, but far fewer than would be hurt if we didn't maintain the containment. So what happens now? I asked. That depends on both of you, James replied. You know the truth. You can walk away if you want, I wouldn't blame you. But I need night guards who understand what they're really doing here. Kelly and I exchanged looks. We had to lie, but I couldn't ignore how important the stuff we were protecting really was. The rules I once thought were pointless now made total sense. They'd built them over years to keep something dangerous locked away. I'm staying, I said after a moment, but no more secrets. I want to know everything about the containment system. Same, Kelly added, and I want to help map the connections to other locations. My old diner can't be the only place with similar phenomena. James looked relieved. Thank you. I'll show you everything I know about. A low rumble cut him off. The floor beneath us shook a little, making dust fall from the ceiling. Was that an earthquake? Kelly asked. The rumbling got worse. Books started to fall off the shelves. The small room shook so hard we had to push against the walls to keep our balance. That's not an earthquake, James said, his face going pale. He crawled quickly through the opening, and we followed him back into the maintenance room and then out into the corridor. The main security alarm started blaring through the whole place. Red emergency lights flashed in the hallway as we ran toward the security office. Inside, the monitors showed chaos. Multiple camera feeds were just static, while others showed doors opening and closing on their own. The building had gotten so cold I could see my breath in the air. Look, Kelly pointed to the monitor showing the second-floor hallway outside Unit B7. A guy was at the door, trying to break the lock with bolt cutters. I knew who it was right away. Thomas, who used to work as a night guard until he got fired a few months back for breaking the rules over and over. What is he doing? I asked. Getting revenge, James said grimly. He never believed the rules mattered. Thought they were just arbitrary power trips. On screen, Thomas finally broke through the lock. As he pulled the door open, the camera feed got messed up, with bands of static rolling across the image. But we could still see what happened next. Something massive and dark shot out from the opened unit. It was dark and fast, covering Thomas in seconds. His body jerked once, then was pulled inside the unit, the door slamming shut behind him. Every light in the facility blinked at the same time. The temperature dropped even further, frost forming on the office windows. The remaining camera feeds switched to static one by one. A voice came over the PA system, a sound I can only describe as multiple voices speaking in different languages at once. The words impossible to understand, but clearly threatening. James stumbled back against the wall, his face pale. "The containment is failing," he whispered. The facility looked different now after James said those words. "The containment is failing." The walls of the security office looked like they were moving. The screens went dark, then turned back on showing weird things. Hallways that weren't there before, storage units that opened into big empty spaces, and shadows that moved through the hallways like they knew where they were going. "What's happening?" Kelly asked, her voice steady despite everything. "Reality is bleeding through," James said, moving to the emergency panel near the door. When Thomas opened B7, he created a primary breach point. The boundaries between worlds are collapsing. I watched the security feed from the second floor twist and distort. The hallway outside B7 stretched on screen, growing longer with each passing second. Doors appeared along walls that had been empty before. The laws of physics were breaking down inside our building. "We need the emergency protocols," I said, remembering the leather-bound manual we'd found in the hidden room. "The containment renewal process. Can we use it to fix this?" James nodded, opening a cabinet I'd never noticed before. "We need to implement the full reset procedure. It was designed for the 7-year renewal, but it should work for an acute breach." He pulled out a wooden box and placed it on the desk. Inside were 7 smooth black stones, each marked with symbols that hurt my eyes when I tried to focus on them. "These are anchor stones," James explained, handing 3 to me and 3 to Kelly. "They need to be placed at specific points throughout the facility to reinforce the dimensional boundaries. The journals mentioned phrases to recite," Kelly said, pocketing her stones. James removed a small leather notebook from the box. "Each stone has its own activation phrase. The phrases must be spoken exactly as written while placing the stone." The building shuddered again. On the monitors, I watched as a storage unit on the first floor bulged outward, its metal door bending into impossible angles before tearing open. Something dark and fluid poured out, spreading across the floor. "We don't have much time," James said, handing me the notebook. "Kelly, you need to secure the lower levels. Place your stones at the main entrance, the east stairwell in Unit A3. Kelly nodded, her face set with determination. "Ryan," James continued, "you'll take the upper levels. West stairwell, maintenance room, and the corridor outside B7. I'll prepare the primary containment ritual here." "What about the 7th stone?" I asked, noticing he'd kept one in the box. James looked grave. "That's the keystone. It needs to be placed inside Unit B7 itself, at the center of the breach." My stomach tightened. "Inside B7? Where Thomas was—" "Yes," James interrupted. "But first we need to stabilize the outer boundaries. Go now, both of you. We have minutes, not hours." Kelly and I ran out of the office and split up at the first intersection. She went toward the main entrance while I ran for the west stairwell. The building felt wrong around me. The hallway twisted a little, making me dizzy with each step. The air tasted like metal, like blood and that smell after lightning. When I got to the stairwell, I took out the first stone in the notebook. The phrase for this spot was written in what looked like Latin, Claudo portum inter mundos. I put the stone in the corner where the stairs met the wall and said the words. It worked right away. The stone sank into the concrete like it had always been there. A wave of energy spread out from it, making the air shake. The stairwell, which had been twisting in front of me, seemed to snap back to normal. 1 down, 2 to go. I headed to the maintenance room next, trying to find my way through hallways that kept changing. Doors showed up on my right where there weren't any before. A window showed a sky with strange stars and patterns that shouldn't exist. I kept looking straight ahead and didn't stop. The maintenance room door was right where it should be, but when I opened it, the room inside was twice as big as normal. The tools on the walls glowed with a soft blue light. I found the spot marked in the notebook, under the electrical panel, and put down the second stone. Sigillum locus, defendo nos, I read, my voice echoing strangely in the expanded space. Again, the stone joined with the building. The room got smaller around me, tools falling to the floor as walls went back to normal. I barely got out before the door frame went back to its regular size. 2 down. 1 more to go before the final stone. Getting to the second floor wasn't easy. The stairs kept changing direction, taking me to the 3rd floor, then the basement, before finally dropping me off on the right level. The hallway outside B7 looked completely different. It was at least 3 times longer than normal, with the ceiling so high I could barely see it. The air felt thick and heavy, like I was walking through water. Unit B7's door was the only normal thing, just a regular storage unit door, closed tight, with no sign of what happened earlier. But standing in front of it, I could tell something big was waiting on the other side, pushing against the thin metal. I took out the 3rd stone and found the matching phrase, Terminus hic stat, ultra ne transies. As I put the stone on the floor outside B7, the hallway started shaking hard. The walls bent inward. The lights blinked on and off, leaving me in darkness before coming back. I tried to stay on my feet as I said the words, my voice almost covered up by a deep growl that seemed to come from everywhere. The stone turned on with a flash of cold blue light. The hallway partly went back to normal, though it stayed longer than it should be. The pressure from beyond B7's door got weaker, but I could still feel it, whatever was behind there, trying to get through. I made my way back to the security office, finding James bent over the desk surrounded by open books and strange tools. The 7th stone, bigger than the others, sat in the middle of a circle drawn in what smelled like salt and iron. "Did you place all 3?" James asked without looking up. "Yes," I said, catching my breath. "Kelly?" "She just confirmed her stones are in place." James finally raised his head. He looked exhausted, deep lines etched into his face. "The outer boundaries are stabilizing, but the primary breach in B7 is still growing. We need to place the keystone." A voice crackled over the radio. "Ryan, James, it's Kelly. I can't get back upstairs. The stairwells have changed. I'm trapped on the 1st floor." James picked up the radio. "Stay where you are. The anchor stones are working, but they're creating a transformation zone. The facility is rearranging itself to contain the breach." "So, what's the plan for B7? I asked. James looked at me, his expression grim. "Someone needs to go in and place the keystone at the center of the breach. Inside B7, where that thing took Thomas." "Yes." James picked up the final stone, tracing one of its symbols with his finger. This will close the primary rupture and reset the entire containment system, but it has to be placed precisely at the focal point. And that focal point is inside the unit, I said, understanding what he wasn't saying. Inside whatever took Thomas. James nodded. I should be the one to go. It's my family's responsibility. I'll do it, I interrupted, surprising myself. Ryan, you don't understand what's in there. The journals call it the confluence, a point where multiple realities merge. Inside B7, the laws of physics, time, even consciousness don't function normally. But I've seen things others can't, I reminded him. You said I have natural instincts for navigating between realities. James paused, looking torn. Finally, he put the keystone in my hand. It was heavier than it looked, with a strange warmth that I could feel against my palm. The activation phrase is here, he said, pointing to a passage in the notebook. You must reach the exact center of the breach. You'll know it when you see it. Place the stone, speak the phrase, and get out immediately. Once the stone activates, reality will snap back into alignment. Anything not in its proper world will be forced back. Including me, if I don't make it out in time, I guessed. James didn't deny it. The radio crackled again. Guys, whatever you're planning, do it fast. Kelly's voice came through, tight with urgency. The first floor is changing again. I can see things moving through the walls. I'm going now, I said, pocketing the stone and notebook. James grabbed my arm. Ryan, listen carefully. Once inside, you'll see and hear things designed to keep you from your goal. Remember why you're there. Don't get distracted, don't listen to voices, and above all, don't lose your grip on the stone. I nodded, trying to look more confident than I felt. Good luck, James said, releasing my arm. I'll try to monitor your progress, but communications probably won't work once you're inside. The trip back to B7 was weird. Easier in some ways, harder in others. The building seemed more stable thanks to the anchor stones, but new weird stuff had popped up. I walked past an open storage unit that somehow had an entire desert inside it. Another one was just pitch-black darkness that ate up my flashlight beam. When I got to B7, the door was open a crack with blue light leaking out around the edges. I took a breath, grabbed the stone in my pocket, and pulled the door open. Inside wasn't a storage unit at all. It was a spinning mess of weird colors with a black spot in the middle. The room seemed way bigger than the 10x10 storage unit it should have been. The gravity was all messed up too. Papers and small stuff just floated in the air or circled around like tiny planets. I stepped inside and the door slammed shut behind me with a huge bang. It was dead quiet. I couldn't even hear my own footsteps as I walked deeper in. There were shadows everywhere, hundreds of them, bending and moving across surfaces that shouldn't be there. I kept walking toward the center where it was darkest. Everything felt wrong with each step. My body felt super heavy 1 second, then weightless the next. Time got weird too. I blinked, and suddenly I was 10 feet away with no memory of walking there. I heard voices whispering all around me. They said my name, told me secrets, made promises. I ignored them and focused on getting to the center. Something moved out of the corner of my eye. It looked human. I turned and saw Thomas, or what used to be Thomas. He was completely still, see-through like colored glass, with a terrified look frozen on his face. His head turned to look at me, moving way too smoothly. You can't close it, he said, his voice echoing strangely. It's too late. It's already inside all of you. I walked past him, not wanting to talk. The center was close now, where all the spinning colors and shadows seemed to come from. Ryan Mitchell. I stopped. That voice wasn't Thomas. It wasn't human. It sounded like a bunch of voices talking at once, making my head hurt. Standing before me was myself. A perfect copy, but something was off in ways I couldn't put my finger on. Its smile stretched too far across its face. Its eyes seemed to catch light even though the room was dark. "You don't need to close the breach," my duplicate said. "You could join us instead. See what lies beyond your limited reality." "No thanks," I said, stepping around it. "I like my reality limited." The thing wearing my face reached for me, its arms stretching impossibly long. "You already belong to us. You've seen what others cannot. That's our mark on you." I pulled the keystone from my pocket. The copy hissed, backing away. "You belong here," it insisted, its form flickering between my appearance and something else, something with too many limbs and eyes. "You'll never truly fit in their world again." "Maybe not," I admitted, pushing forward. "But it's still my world." I got to the middle, a dark spot that seemed to suck in and push out shadows at the same time. Standing there, I felt like there were tons of other worlds pushing against this spot, all trying to get through. I put the keystone right in the middle of the darkness and opened my notebook. The activation phrase was longer than the others, written in some language I didn't know. When I started reading, the air around me changed from freezing to burning in a split second. The swirling colors moved faster. The shadows made terrible noises. My double jumped at me, its body melting into something terrifying. I said the last words of the phrase just as its fingers, now sharp claws, reached for my neck. The keystone sank into the darkness and burst with bright light. A blast of energy shot outward, throwing me back toward the door. The opening started to close, like reality was crumpling in on itself. I scrambled to my feet and ran for the exit, with everything falling apart behind me. Things that were floating in the air dropped, shadows pulled inward, and the spinning mess crashed toward the keystone. I hit the door just as everything started to completely fall apart. I yanked it open and threw myself through, landing hard on the hallway floor as Unit B7's door slammed shut behind me. I lay there catching my breath. The hallway looked normal again. Regular width, normal ceiling height, standard fluorescent lights. I sat up and watched the door to B7 shine blue for a second before turning back to plain metal gray. Ryan, come in!" James's voice came from the radio clipped to my belt. I fumbled for it with shaking hands. "I'm here. It's done. Get back to the security office. The containment reset is working, but the facility is still stabilizing." I walked through hallways that looked more and more normal, even though the walls still shook a bit now and then. When I got to the security office, James and Kelly were waiting there, both looking just as tired as I was. "You made it," Kelly said, relief washing over her face. When the reset started, I thought, "What did you see in there?" James asked, his voice quiet. I sank into a chair. The confluence, Thomas, and something wearing my face. James nodded like he expected this. "The entities sometimes make copies of people who can see them. They're trying to make a connection, a way to cross over." "It said I already belonged to them," I said. "That seeing them was their mark on me." "Not exactly," James replied. "Your ability to perceive the entities is natural, something you were born with. It doesn't mean you belong to them. It means you can see the truth of reality that most people can't." We sat in silence for a while, watching the security monitors as the facility gradually returned to normal. Storage units reverted to their proper contents. The impossible doors disappeared. The strange lights faded. After what seemed like hours, James spoke again. "Ryan, I want to offer you a full partnership in managing this facility." I raised my eyebrows. "Partnership? You've proven yourself more valuable than I could have hoped. Your natural ability to navigate between realities, to place the keystone and return, that's rare. The facility needs someone like you, someone who understands both the dangers and the importance of what we're containing." "And me?" Kelly asked. James smiled slightly. "I'd like you to stay on as well. Your analytical approach balances Ryan's intuitive one. Together, you'd make an excellent team for maintaining the boundaries." I thought about what had happened over the past week, from desperate job seeker to night guard to whatever I was becoming. The storage facility had changed me, opened my eyes to realities I never knew existed. And now James was offering me a chance to protect those boundaries. "I accept," I said finally. "But we need to be honest with the night guards from now on. No more half-truths about building quirks. They deserve to know what they're really guarding." James hesitated, then nodded. "You're right. The old approach hasn't served us well. We'll set up new protocols, new training methods, and new rules," I added, thinking of all I'd experienced. "Some of the old ones need updating, based on what we've learned." For the next several hours, as the facility got back to normal, we started writing new procedures. I began a new rule book, putting in what I'd learned from my own run-ins with the strange things. Rule 1 stayed the same: never open Unit B7, but we changed many others to make them easier to understand. By dawn, the crisis was over. The storage facility looked completely normal on the screens, just a regular 3-story building full of people's stuff. But now I knew the truth. I understood what was really there, hidden behind doors and walls that sometimes disappeared. As the sun came up through the lobby windows, I finished writing the last entry in the new rulebook. Remember that the rules are here for a reason. They come from hard lessons and real danger. Your job isn't just to follow them. It's to keep these weird things locked away. Welcome to Westlake Storage Facility, Guard.